Hello and welcome to the News Agenda. Sorry, I've forgotten our name already. Welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox, and online political editor Dan Bloom. We're going to take you through the best stories in today's papers and try to help you make some sense of the news. We've got quite a bit today. Through it all, we want you to ask your own questions. Ask us the thing that's bothering you, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. So, what have we got today? Trump is ill. Tested positive for coronavirus. We've got famous and political faces that are flouting the corona restrictions. And now we've got a Viking, apparently, who's disobeying the travel restrictions. But first off, the Mirror front page today has an amazing talk with Latonya Floyd, sister of George, who was killed back in May when a policeman knelt on his neck as he begged for his life. Now, the death sparked protests around the world, set America on fire, gave new life to the Black Lives Matter movement, and here his sister's speaking for the first time. So Dan, tell us what she's saying.
Well, it's a very dignified interview with our US editor. She's saying that, just describing the emotions that her family have been through, the roller coaster they've seen over the last few months, and the sort of shock at seeing what it's turned into. So they're obviously, fighting for justice, and they're essentially she's saying, don't vote for Trump. And if you vote for Trump, we'll be plunged into hell, is the word that she uses. But she's also, condemning what Trump condemned, I guess, although he did it in rather a sort of selective way, the sort of violence and things like that erupted as well. She says, that is not the way forward. We're better than that. We're not about that as a family. And George, who she calls Perry, wouldn't have been about that either. So it's very, it's a very sort of balanced and dignified thing that she's doing.
Yeah, she hasn't spoken before, Latonya, and it's a really powerful read. I recommend, if you get the chance, to go and grab a copy of the Mirror today and give it a read. It's the page 1 and the 4-5 spread. And one of the best quotes that really jumped out at me was towards the end. She says, "Our votes are stronger than any brick that's thrown. That's how we bring about change this country needs." I thought it was a really dignified, powerful interview, an intervention in a way. I'm sure it's going to make big news in the States. But of course, there's other things going on in the States today.
Yes.
Other news, which is going to probably knock her a bit off the old news agenda. Now, Donald Trump is ill, as probably everybody on social media is already aware. Now, I'm sure I can't be the only person doing this, but I've got him a get well soon present because we don't want him to suffer. So here it is. Because I understand that a quick shot of bleach is going to clear that COVID right up, Donald. You won't have any problems with this. Now, I understand that, obviously I can't be the only person FedExing him some Domestos this week. But of course, it's not wise to drink bleach, kids. Don't do it. But Trump did say only a few months ago we needed to test if bleach might work as well on the human body as it does on kitchen surfaces. So this is a perfect opportunity, isn't it, Dan? Let's get him testing the thing that he said needed testing.
Afraid I can't really condone that one, but the way this turns out for Donald Trump, who clearly, is not a young man and perhaps not the healthiest man either, is going to steer.
Obese.
Well, it could steer the way that coronavirus is reacted to in the US, and particularly among his supporters, hugely. Because think about it, if he survives, which we all hope, he will come through this and recover, regardless of your politics. If he has an easy time of it and it's just a mild case, what's to stop him saying, well, I beat it, it's easy, it's overblown, it's not a big deal, which is the sort of comment he's used before. If he has an experience like Boris Johnson, where he ends up quite seriously ill, then it might give a few people on his sort of wing of US politics pause for thought about things they've said about coronavirus in the past.
There's a couple of scenarios I can see playing out here. The first is that, you already said, that he gets it, it's pretty mild, and he comes out like Bolsonaro in Brazil, another strongman leader, and goes, we don't need to worry about this, it's just the flu. Honestly, look, I'm taking paracetamol, don't worry about it. Which would mean that every anti-vaxxer, every anti-masker, every hoaxer is going to have, more grist to their mill, isn't it? The second scenario is that he gets it and he dies, which would be possible because of his obesity and because of his age. But that would be incredibly awful for America. You'd have a last-minute shoe-in for an election, probably Mike Pence, who's an absolute loon. You'd have, I'll get you in a minute, Vincent, I promise. You have an absolute loon. You'd have riots on the streets. The hoaxers and the anti-maskers and the anti-vaxxers would say the Democrats had killed him, that Nancy Pelosi had turned into Nurse Ratched and sneaked in and put a pillow over his face or something. So dying would not be a good idea. And if he gets it really bad and stays in a coma for a few months, then they might even suspend the election. Could they do that? That's what he's wanted all along. And then suddenly, magically, he'll pop back healthy again in the new year and go, oh, I don't need an election now. And he'd get all the public sympathy. And if there was an election, he'll get the votes. What do you think?
Well, as Vincent says, all this is to stop the election or to postpone. It's a hoax. I would not subscribe to that one myself, but we don't know. We don't really know, do we, what it will do to the election timetable if he does end up very seriously ill, like you say, and if he does end up in a coma, because or something similar, because the sort of precedent is that if the president's incapacitated, I think the vice president takes over, doesn't he? But I'm not. I haven't read up enough on the US, law to know what happens in election time, because the date of the election is so set down in the US. It's not like
exactly.
the UK.
It's the dates of the election and at what point the handover of power happens that are absolutely set down in law in the States. You're right. So on January, I think it's 21st, there has to be a president in office. Either the last one continues or the next one has to come in, and they have to have a transition for a few months before that. So if Trump can't stand for the election, then cancelling the election or delaying the election might be a possibility, or they'd have to put in a placeholder until he can get well. But it's going to be very difficult for Biden, I would have thought, now to really compete and to argue that Donald Trump's coronavirus responses have been too bad when the man's suffering, because he's got to tread a very fine line. He can't come and make a joke about a bottle of bleach. He has to a very fine line between offering sympathy and genuine concern while saying this is all Trump's fault. He's got himself ill, which is a tricky one to follow, isn't it? Yeah,
and what happens if you're insensitive about this sort of thing? It would all backfire on him completely. He can't just drive the coach and horses through the whole thing. He's got to be very nuanced about it. Yeah,
it's all on a knife edge in the States, and I could just see the race war they've got bubbling away, just stepping up a gear if he were to get seriously ill or to say something daft from his bed. I do hope they've taken his phone away and he can't tweet anymore, because that the thought of him having that his only communication with the world would be pretty grim.
Well, he's a human being, isn't he? And he suffers like the rest of us. And the problem is that you've got to divorce that caring for him as a human being, as if you're a critic of him, still, criticising all of his policies and all of the things that perhaps he's got wrong over the last few months.
Exactly. I think the best case scenario would be that he does a Boris. He has a brush with death, realises how serious and important this is, comes out, starts talking about losing weight. He starts seeing Donald Trump jogging around the White House lawn, and sort of has a change of heart and perhaps tries to do better as a result. I don't know how likely that is, but I think that's probably the best thing that anyone could hope for, is that he lives and is better for it, or a better president for it anyway.
Perhaps he'll come out and say, I was wrong, but who knows?
I don't think even Boris Johnson's done that one yet. Right, and finally, so everyone can get on with their day, we've found someone who's breaking the COVID restrictions. We've had Stanley Johnson, there he is, coming out of a shop without his mask on, despite knowing surely what the rules are. We've had the SNP MP Ferrier. She's been up and down from Scotland on the train, despite thinking she had COVID and then testing positive for it. Mm-hmm. And of course, we've had Jeremy Corbyn yesterday, snapped on the front page of The Sun, enjoying a dinner party for 9. And we're all being told you can't go and meet your relatives now. It's not possible. But someone's got a way around this, apparently, Dan. Now, Denmark bans us travelling to Denmark, but apparently there's a Dane who's going to be going to Denmark just to meet a relative.
I know, it's outrageous. Some people just think the rules don't apply to them. We've got a Viking who is 1,000 years old, and I must add, extremely dead. No, that's not the Viking.
That's the Viking.
Who's being reunited with a relative. So loads of us in all these local lockdowns can't go and see our, uncles and parents and children and grandchildren and all the rest of it. And you've got these two Vikings meeting up, even though Denmark actually has a ban on people from the UK entering. You have to have a worthy purpose to enter. Now, I might say if there was any worthy purpose, this is probably a pretty good one, to be fair.
Well, yeah, I mean, having the skeleton go back to its place of origin is interesting, and to have it next to another skeleton, which they've managed to figure out is in Denmark already, which is a close relative, then that's just interesting to think about the medicine and the science behind it. But as far as worthy reasons to get around the travel restrictions go, the skeleton's going to have to be accompanied by some actual living human beings, and it's not like the two skeletons are going to be having a good old hug and go, "Oh, Bjorn, it's great to see you again, my friend." It's all a bit, I can't quite see the point in the middle of this going on, especially as going to museums in Denmark might be a bit sticky at the moment. Now, do we have any more questions from the viewer? Both of them, either of them. We've had one from Vincent earlier on, and there's apparently the questions have been chosen that are not quite good enough. So we've always got.
I can ask you a question if you like. Who do you think is the worst flouter? Because I think it's Margaret Ferrier in terms of the actual what she's done. You know, you get you think you have coronavirus, travel 400 miles on a train, and then you test positive and travel another 400 miles back on a train. I mean, it's a step beyond, isn't it?
It's going to get compared a lot to Dominic Cummings, isn't it? Which is the famous one. And unfortunately, Cummings went north up the M1 with suspected coronavirus. He took his whole family with him. And when they're up there, his son was in hospital. So he did put some pressure on regional NHS. And Ferrier came south with suspected symptoms, but having done a test, she should have isolated at home then and waited for the result of that test. But then when she got here and she got the positive result, she went home, which I can understand the decision to go back. It may not have been safe, but I can understand that you want to isolate at home, and she's in London and she lives in Scotland. I suppose under the rules, you know, it's not possible for everyone just to be in a hotel room for 2 weeks or something. But it's the coming south in the first place that's a sticky wicket for her. And props to the SNP. They have actually said that this is really not on, and they've withdrawn the whip, and they've been very tough on her, which is the opposite of what's happened with Cummings, of course. Though he's not an MP, it's still quite an issue. And she's referred herself to the police, which Cummings didn't do. So
she's got her own party saying she has to resign from Parliament now. I say her own party, she's lost the whip as well. And that's entirely up to her now, because you can't really sack an MP unless they're convicted of a criminal offence. And even then, it's pretty difficult. You know, there's a whole process. They might not leave. So the only way to end this thoroughly for her is to say, I'm quitting as an MP, which is obviously quite a big thing to do.
For a couple of train journeys. Yeah.
Quite big train journeys.
Big train journeys, big ones. But it's, I don't know quite what to think about it, really, to be honest with you, in answer to your question. So Joanne, I like it. Well done, Joanne. Joanne, will the whole of the White House be quarantined? All those who've been around him. Well, they've been testing those around him in the White House for quite a while, haven't they? So it was always a matter of time before he actually came down with it. But presumably they know who his close contacts are, and they're going to be testing those and restricting them. But as far as the Americans are concerned, Donald Trump's the most important person in the country anyway, isn't he? So they're not going to shut down the entire business of government.
He's also, though, he's a germaphobe, isn't he? So presumably, just as he's been very careful about who's had access to him, it'll work the other way around. And I think Hope Hicks was already quarantining, and that's how we knew Donald Trump might be ill overnight. So I suspect there'll be the sort of ring of steel that America's healthcare system doesn't afford to most normal people, perhaps. But you know, we're not in the White House, and we haven't got all the details.
Yeah,
Shall I ask
I'm sure
he'll answer Kirsty's one. So.
Yes, feel free.
Yeah, when can people go back to work? Good question, Kirsty. As you can see, we are part of the issue here. The work from home guidance was kind of brought back a couple of weeks ago. And as far as we've been told, these sorts of restrictions are probably going to be in place for the whole winter, because things only really get worse in the winter, and there's no sign of anything being able to be lifted. So if you're talking about an office job where you're working from home, then your boss can ask you to come back in, but the chances of that change, of the government advice changing before about February, March, are pretty low, I would say.
Yeah, Alan, what time's this show on? Is it every day? First time you've seen it. Hi, Alan. Welcome. Be here. We're doing it at the moment. We're doing it Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So pop in and have your say. This is the only newspaper review where the viewers can actually influence what is happening and being discussed on the screen at the time. You want to watch Sky, you want to watch BBC, which also do sometimes, that's fine, but it's all run by the presenter in the studio, in the production crew. So this is your chance to ask the questions about the news, to find out what's happening in the news agenda and what you should make of it, and then go on about your day and use that information when you're discussing it with other people or shouting at the telly or whatever it is. So this is your chance to get involved 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. See you next time, Alan.
We're the People's Paper Review, aren't we?
We are.
We've even got former Home Secretary Alan Johnson calling in. It might be a different one. I don't know.
Let's see how many politicians we can get cracking onto us while we're here. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. We're going to let you get on with your work now. It's 9:30. Your boss wants you to crack on with whatever it is you're supposed to be doing, and we probably ought to be too. I've got to take a urine sample to the vets for my dog. So we all got other stuff to do. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.